Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another uLaw webinar. Today's webinar is going to capabilities of the payment integration module within uLaw. This particular feature allows our legal professional clients to be able to integrate with third-party payment gateway providers such as TD, Pivotal, Moneris, and we're working through that list of other providers in Canada through a very secure and transparent way, provide ease of access and payments processing rather for both trust and for general related transactions in a law firm. Okay. Now today's webinar has not been accredited for any CPD credits. It's going to be a session where we walk you through examples using uLawPractice, our playground account, and walk you through how you would go about, first and foremost, integrating uLaw with these third-party payment gateways. And further to that, we'll talk about, once integrated, how do I use that feature to accept both trust as well as general related payments. So obviously when I'm talking about trust, I'm talking also about taking retainers as payments through credit cards and through these payment gateways. And we'll see how integrating with these providers also keeps you compliant, where these providers allow for the trust account to be untouched and then only use your general account to transact any fees that they may charge, or in fact they do charge a fee that they will charge to provide you with this facility. Okay? So once again, for some housekeeping, I kindly request you to mute your phone lines, and please do use the chat window at any time to ask us any questions. Today's session is going to be on the payment integration feature within uLaw. It's not been accredited for any CPD credits, but we hope that it's a fun session where you're going to learn about how you can integrate uLaw with third-party credit card payment gateways to accept payments, both trust and general related, giving you that convenience and compliance all at the same time. Okay? So, like every other uLaw webinar, today's webinar has a clear-cut agenda. We're going to spend a lot of time actually demonstrating it in the product itself, so I'll skip the slide share real quick. I'm going to go through it real fast just to set the context. And once I've done that, I'm going to jump into the actual demo of uLaw, and we'll take examples of how you would use a traditional payment process method, and then how we allow you to integrate with these third-party payment gateways. Okay? So what value does the payment integration bring to your business? We're going to talk about that. How can it better streamline some of the important components or aspects of your business, which is getting paid, right? One of the biggest challenges in the legal business is sometimes you have to deal with bounced checks and all the back office work that goes behind reconciling those checks, those bounced checks, going back to your client to get a new payment plan, and you've obviously been there, done that. So streamlining the most important aspect, which is actually getting paid and being confident about that payment then and there, instead of having to wait the time, is a critical feature or a critical business impact that this feature provides. We started off with the Pivotal Payments and Moneris as the top two companies that we work with, and these are third-party payment gateways that allow you to accept credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, etc., from your client. And now we've evolved the product to also work with TD Canada Trust. We're making all the effort possible to integrate with other providers that are making roads into Canada, such as LawPay. And we're also invested heavily in our mobile platform for users in uLaw. You probably acknowledge that the mobile app within your iPhone or Android is a big part of our platform play, and we're investing heavily to also allow our clients accept payments through their mobile app, okay, through the uLaw mobile app. we're going to talk about, the compliant methods of collecting funds electronically in trust. So one of the aspects that I touched upon earlier, these providers, be it TD, Moneris, Pivotal, one of the good things that they do is they do keep you trust compliant. But let's assume there's a 1% bank fee or transactional fee that any of these providers charge you as a user of that particular product. That 1% of that transaction amount, so let's say this is or let's just keep it $100 or even $1,000. So let's say there's a $1,000 retainer that you're just accepting from a client. That 1% or that $10 transactional fee is now removed or withdrawn from your general account, leaving your trust account untouched. So the $1,000 gets deposited into your trust account, and the corresponding 1% bank or transactional fee of $10 gets withdrawn from your general account, which becomes obviously your office expense, right? The key here is that the trust account is left untouched, and it only has relevant transactions that are client related. Okay? Because that $10 is your office's expense to run business, to make this convenient, and make your law firm that much more accessible to work with. And then we're going to move into how do I set up this within the uLaw product. I'm going to walk through maybe one or two examples. We'll probably take TD and or Moneris or Pivotal and kind of really walk you through some of the cool features and functionalities and avenues of accepting these client payments. Okay? So what are some of the positives? Obviously, you get paid faster and accurately. So very important that whether that's a retainer or whether that's a general payment, if let's say you're accessing that third-party payment gateway right through the uLaw product, you now have the opportunity, not only get paid faster because as soon as the transaction is done, that money is deposited into your trust account or general account. There's also the accurate amount, but also you're making sure there are no problems with that credit card. If it does bounce, you know it right away. Gives you enough time to react, maybe ask your client for another credit card or maybe a check or a different method of payment, right? So it allows you to react faster, saves you that time, and time is money, as you all understand in the legal business. For the benefit that it provides, the compliance that it provides, the peace of mind and flexibility that it provides, it's relatively cost effective, right? You always have to pay a price for the convenience and the features, but it's relatively cost effective if you were to compare it with all the time and money spent in recovering a bounced payment. Now, each provider would provide you with their own rate card of how much they would charge you. Most of the times we work with these providers and we have representatives across these three companies that we introduce our clients to, who then pick up the conversation to negotiate the best rate based on their situation. Yeah. One cool thing about this is similar to uLaw being cloud-based, it does give you that anytime, anywhere access, right? Any device that's connected to the internet gives you that key capability to be able to process that payment. The gateways do accept major credit cards, and this gives you the option to provide that flexibility to your client to be able to pay you for your service across this new dimension of multiple credit card convenient processing way. Because you want to try and provide as many features and functionalities to make it easier and convenient for the modern consumer to be able to work with your firm. And as much as we love checks, providing these additional features is only going to make the overall usability and approachability to your firm that much more better, right? So it does certainly give your clients more options to pay for your service. And as we discussed earlier, you're not waiting for that check to clear or for you to get the news that it's actually bounced, especially if it happens maybe during the end of the month when you're actually reconciling your accounts. Any bounce checks can only lead to some extra headaches, some extra work that still needs to get done to reconcile those balances properly. So if you're using a credit card or a payment gateway, one of the opportunity or positives is the money gets deposited right away, and any fees that have to be transacted gets transacted right from your compliant way from your general account right away as well. Okay? So an online credit card, and how we're going to talk briefly about how do they accomplish, be it Pivotal, Moneris, or ED, how do they accomplish the compliance? How do they separate out both trust and general? Okay. Now, first and foremost, all these companies do separate your trust account from your general account. Okay. They provide a separate kiosk or a terminal ID, as they call it, for both the trust account and the general account. No matter who you bank with, and you could bank with other financial institutions, they are now able to connect with the corresponding trust and general account across those institutions. Okay? So if you are to accept a retainer in uLaw, and through the proper integration with the third party, uLaw would send the message that this is a money that needs to be deposited into the trust account, which is then connected behind the scene to the actual trust account that you have with your financial institution for money to be deposited. For money to be withdrawn, the general terminal ID is connected with your general account in that financial institution for any withdrawal. If payment is going into your general account, uLaw, let's say there's no trust involved, and if it's just a client payment, again, uLaw would trigger the right channel for that money to be deposited into, right? So the workflow clearly understands where the money needs to go in and needs to come out. Okay, that key initial prerequisite is something that we established, and we work with our partners to establish that structure, if you will, for all our clients. Now, there are no additional steps. There's no cost involved for uLaw. You don't have to pay uLaw for this feature. The only fee you're paying is the transaction fee, and if there's any additional fees that these third-party payment processing companies ask for. And ensuring that the funds are approved at the time of processing guarantees that the payment of the invoices and retainers are done appropriately, right? So if someone just provided a credit card and for whatever reason there are no funds in the credit card, this does a real-time transaction to make sure that there are funds. And if there are no funds, it provides you with the warning to say that, hey, this credit card did not go through. So that's very important. Provide that just-in-time response so that you, as the legal professional and the business owner, are able to ask your client for other means of payment, right? Just to make smarter decisions, these tools allow you and give you that capability. Okay, we'll just cut to the chase and we'll really come down to, okay, all that's cool and fine and dandy. How do I get this done, right? So if you are a uLaw user or someone who's considering a legal accounting product, we're a cloud-based product ourselves, legal accounting, practice management, business accounting was what we do. And for current users and for prospective users, what we allow you to do is right within our settings, we allow you to associate your uLaw account with any of these three different providers. So the prerequisite is first is to explore options, talk to these providers that we work with today, understand who is flexible for your business based on the number of transactions, based on the volume of transactions, sometimes the dollars of these transactions, and settle on one of those providers once you've agreed upon a certain fee structure. And then once you've decided that individual firm does behind-the-scene connection with your financial trust and general accounts, with whichever financial institution you work with, right? And once that's done, they provide you with a secret key. All these providers provide you with a secret key for each of those IDs, both for trust and general. You're going to basically take that information and you're going to provide it within uLaw settings one time. Okay? And once that's set up, right within uLaw. You can almost use uLaw as your terminal to accept these payments right within the workflow of that matter. Okay? Just reiterating, not only is it convenient, it's most definitely secure, because these hosted payment collections are encrypted and are tokenized. So you can be rest assured that the transactions are secured and done through a proper channel, tokenized. Now, uLaw does not store any credit card information. You would see during our demo that when we initiate that call to accept that payment, our call is being made to any of these three providers, and they are the ones who are going to actually capture your credit card information of your client to make that transaction happen. Okay? Okay, so let's skip all these slide shares and then really spend the time, because we want to try and make this work for all our clients. This is not a CPD session, so the next 30 minutes, about 30 to 25 to 30 minutes, let's focus on demonstrating how first and foremost you would integrate this, other key features that are available within the uLaw product to capture these payments across various channels as well. And hopefully at the end of this session, it leaves you with a thought process of wanting to explore these payment options if you're not already considering it. Okay? And we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have during this presentation, or if you want to hold your thoughts after the presentation, kindly do email us at support@uLawPractice.com. Okay? As I mentioned earlier, before I jump ship to walk you through the product, we are a Canadian legal accounting, practice management, and a business accounting software based out of Ottawa. And we've been serving several hundred legal professionals across the country, and we do offer a no-obligation 30-day trial for you to come and explore. And hopefully we would do you would be convinced of the effort that we put in to earn your business. Okay? So I'm now logged in, and I use this account, Mr. Roger Moore, as the legal professional, as my practice account or playground account, demo account for a lot of my demonstrations. I'm going to skip the traditional workflow that I do of adding a client or a matter. I'm already in preparation for this webinar. I've created a client by the name Peter Plan. I've also taken the step of creating a matter for Peter Plan for, let's say, distracted driving, which is a big buzzword now in Ontario, and we're going to call it a POA area practice. Once you've done this, you've obviously set up the file, you've set up the matter for Mr. Peter, Roger Moore being the legal professional here, and assuming that Roger Moore is a client of uLaw and he's actually going to use uLaw. And we're going to walk through some traditional payment options of how you would accept payments if you did not have the integrated payment plan to begin with. So let's assume you don't have a payment integration, and let's just put in an initial client intake, and I'm not doing trust yet. I'm just going to go ahead and say, here's an initial client intake docket at about $150 an hour. I'm charging the client that $150 plus tax. Right. So traditional ways of doing this is you actually go ahead and generate an invoice so that you can get paid for it. Okay. Choose the date, the terms and conditions of that invoice, and go ahead and process that invoice so that you can send it to Mr. Peter to pay you for that $169.50. Okay. Now you may have a terminal that you're paying a certain fees for, a monthly fee. You have a terminal in your office, or maybe sometimes you don't. Or you may be doing the old school way of just accepting checks for payments. Today we also see e-transfers being a very common method as well. So here is a simple invoice for a docket to get paid through directly into your general account. Okay? Straightforward, 150 plus taxes. You obviously don't see any other options within this invoice. Now, obviously, you would email this. You can digitally email this invoice, and once your client receives it, assuming that this is a standard client, very ethical, pays you on time, you're just going to go ahead and accept that payment and tell uLaw that you have received that amount. Now, this is where it gets interesting, where the client may actually show up in your office to pay for this. The client may mail a check, right, a check number. You put that in. Or you may have set up where the client's actually paying you through an electronic transfer, right? So when they've actually paid you, you're just assuming that the check that they've sent is going to work, right? But there is a waiting time from the time that check is mailed by your client to the time that you receive it, and then you deposit that into your bank, clears your bank, and only after that is that money technically deposited into your account. And that's when you have access to those funds. So there's a bit of a workflow and a bit of extra additional steps that you have to go through before that money makes into the bank, right? You have obviously tell us where you paid for it. And you can give them a receipt for it. So this is a very traditional old school methodology. Now let's take another example where a retainer is involved. And let's just focus on the old school method. Okay, so I'm going to go into my trust and say, all right, I've just received a retainer. So let's say someone just walked into your office and is willing to pay you $1,000 in retainer. So let's say you don't have the flexibility of providing them with a credit card. Maybe they all have actually a credit card that they can use to pay you. They don't have their checkbook. Then sometimes it may be a missed opportunity. Sometimes it's just a matter of time. If you are accepting a check to deposit, sometimes you don't deposit those checks on time. So it does lead to certain manual nuances or mistakes that may happen when these things happen, right? It is being deposited into your trust account. And you're hoping, again, that particular check does not bounce. Okay? Old school way of things. Now let's talk about the convenience that the integrated payment gateway can provide. Okay? So let me now delete this retainer. I'm just going to go ahead and say unlock this transaction. And let's assume there is no retainer. As I said, as a prerequisite, as a first step, it's important for you as the legal professional to go ahead, make that discussion with all these three vendors, decide upon one vendor, and then come into uLaw. And in our settings, we have this feature or tab within our settings called Accounts. Okay? Now, under Accounts, we have a separate section just for the payment integration setup. Now, in uLaw, because we are a partner, we obviously have a test account for each of these different providers, so please don't try this at home. Technically speaking, you would choose either Pivotal Payments or Monaris or TD Canada Trust as the provider, right? And let's look at all these three examples. Let me start with TD, and I'll start with the trust. The TD provides you with a terminal ID as well as a secret key similar to this, okay? Now, we obviously have a test account, and they've provided us this test account to demonstrate the capabilities. So this is going to be slightly different from a true trust terminal ID secret key and a true general terminal ID and its associated secret key that you would get with TD, okay? But you would get a number similar to this, and that would be a secret key that you would type it into uLaw. And this is protected or visually protected for not anyone to see. You would enter that information and hit the save button. Okay? And once this information is saved, that's all there is to connect uLaw with this payment gateway. Okay? So now let's take that same example where Mr. Peter Plan walks into your office, has a credit card, and is willing to pay you that retainer of $1,000 using that credit card. There's the convenience of the integrated payment plan. Right when he walks in, you can say, "Welcome, Mr. Peter. You send a retainer letter. Give us the $1,000, right? Because that's the amount of retainer. Tell us that this is a credit card." But instead of typing in the information or going through a terminal that you may have, you could actually use uLaw as the terminal itself. So right here you see this payment collection blue button. So you as the legal professional or Mr. Roger Moore can just click on it. It's going to bring up the terminal ID. Now it knows that this is a trust transaction because we had initiated this user interface right from a deposit in trust. Right? So it knows that this was a retainer. So let me just go back. This was a deposit in trust, and the user interface that we're calling this from is, and this is done by uLaw, is right from the new retainer screen. Okay? And when we transact this information, we provide this particular information to TD that this is a trust transaction. So when you say collect payment now, it brings that information where you can collect the credit card information of this client right away. It's for $1,000. Here's an invoice number, and you can say this is for Peter Plan, the Visa card. I obviously have a test credit card. Again, do not try this at home. And put in a CVV number. You can put any comments about the payment. So here's where it gets interesting. So let's say I put in a wrong credit card information. Right away, we're able to tell you that the credit card is invalid. Okay, so you don't have to waste and spin your wheels to figure this out. We can tell you that this is an invalid credit card, even if it's any other form of transaction. It will be declined. Okay. Let's say there were no funds. It's going to come back to tell you. Well, let me just try something different here. I'll just say the CVV card was different. I'm going to submit this payment. There you go. uLaw connects with your TD in real time, and it tells you that this particular information that you provided me was not right, and hence that particular transaction was declined. Okay? So you can actually provide a copy of this to your client and ask them to give you another mode of payment. Or maybe he has another credit card that he wants to give you. Okay? And then you just do the same thing again. And this time, let's just do the right transaction. So again, we've got the validation right. We've done all the unit testing on your behalf, so you don't have to wait for that check to bounce or that credit card to bounce as well. You can do it right in the office. So this is where you are in front of uLaw, and someone's sitting in front of you or is giving you this information over the phone. And that's another convenience too, right? You can put that information right within uLaw. uLaw does work as your terminal in this case. And let me go ahead and submit the payment. It hits the TD account, and now what happens? Two things have happened behind the scenes. One, this $1,000 has been deposited into whatever is the trust account that you have in real life that TD has connected with, right? So TD's trust terminal ID has been associated with your financial institution's trust account, and that's something TD would help you with. Likewise, TD, if that's the chosen payment gateway, would also connect their general terminal ID that they've created with the actual general account that you have with a real-life financial institution. And TD, let's assume the same 1% conversation. If that's the rate that they would charge per transaction, TD would have automatically deposited $1,000 into your trust account and would have removed or withdrawn the $10, which is 1% of the $1,000, out of the general account. Why is that important? It has left your trust account untouched with any bank fees, right? The $10 coming out of your general account makes it also easy for you to report that as an office expense. Okay? So this is fantastic. We also get an email anytime a payment process has been done. Anytime a payment has gone through, an email is sent to the appropriate uLaw account's email address. There you go. The payment processing was done. It was approved. We also get the previous declined. Okay, and all you have to do is copy that code, go into uLaw, and just tell us that that was the description for it. Give them a receipt, makes it easy, and that's how you can deposit $1,000 in real life as well as reflected right in uLaw. Okay? So this is a very simple example of how you could use the uLaw application integrated with a payment gateway to accept credit card payments right off the product when you're doing this either over phone or in person with the client. Okay? Now let's take another example, the same general payment, and let's talk about that. And for that, I'll choose a different payment gateway. Now let me choose the Monaris test account just to make this interesting. Okay, so now I'm just to give you a flavor for it, each of these individual payment gateways has its own set of features, rate cards, flexibilities. We're not specifically aligned with any of these wonders. We do connect with all the three. We're also investing the effort and the time to integrate with other payment gateways, Canadian gateways as well. So let me create another matter for Peter Plan. I'll say new matter. Call this small claims. And the very famous fence issue. And we're going to do the same concept where, this time around we're just going to docket the effort and generate the invoice. Okay? And you can do the same thing. You can call this client to accept that payment. And we're going to show you how uLaw, the fact that now you initiate this as a client payment instead of a new retainer, is going to pass that same information to Monaris and make sure that only the money is deposited in your general account. So no trust is touched here, and hence no trust on the bank side is involved either. Okay? So the same thing, we'll do the client intake for an hour. Remember, we did this same example where we accepted this as a check. This time around, I'm going to show you how we accept this client payment after we've invoiced this client for $169.50. We're going to either call them or when they're in the office, accept it through a credit card right within uLaw. And this time I'll show you the example of Monaris. Okay. First step, let's go ahead and generate that invoice for $169.50. I'm going to just skip the preview for purposes of time. I'm just going to wait for the invoice to be ready. There you go. I've generated the invoice. And it's for the $150 plus tax. Okay. Now, let's say you're ready to accept the payment and you've made that phone call, or it's your assistant who's made that phone call. You can actually go into the contact themselves, or you can accept it right within uLaw by just hitting the question mark. And this time, it's a client owing of a general payment. It's as good as you clicking here to accept that $169.50, and same concept. You're going to use the payment collection button. Now you see this is a slightly different user interface. Now this is more specific to the Monaris integration. It talks to you about the transaction amount, the order ID. Let's put the cardholder name. And I've got a different number for, say, MasterCard. So I'm giving you an example of a MasterCard that I'm using. And you hit the process transaction. Right away, it transacts it, says it's approved. Okay. And all you have to do is take that reference number and tell uLaw that's how you accepted it and where you put that money. So let's assume that the credit card was processed and the amount goes directly into your general account, and you've already told us that. And you can give them a receipt. The receipt would obviously have all that information. So the first example was how you could use TD as an example, as a payment gateway that allows you to accept retainers in a very compliant, trust-compliant manner to accept money through a credit card process as a retainer into a trust account. And when we spoke about how the appropriate fees would then be withdrawn from your general account. The second example we just walked through using Monaris as an example was the same thing. Without trust, we just docketed the effort for this client, for this small claims matter. We generated the invoice, and then we either called them to provide the credit card information, or they probably came in person to provide that information. Either ways, we accepted the credit card through Monaris and processed that transaction directly into your general account. Hopefully that kind of gave you a flavor for what that integration, the power of that integration with that payment gateway, hopefully draws a picture of the flexibility that this feature provides to you as a firm. Now, it doesn't end there. Now, we've tried to up the game a little bit more to provide a little bit of self-sufficiency for our legal clients. Now, who has the time really to make those phone calls, to follow up? Of course, if you have an assistant, or you can always generate a report, and we do this often. We've been approached often to ask for this report, and we help with our customers. But a majority of our customers have a report such as either the invoice balance report, or they may have an aging report of receivables, which basically outlines all the customers and the payments that are outstanding, right? Really make a list or a PDF version of it that tells you who owes you money. And then that's when you're making those phone calls to accept that money from those individual clients, right? But in a fast-paced world where you as a legal professional have limited time to provide focused attention to each of the many clients that you cater to, we thought that providing you with an extra bit of help to provide a bit of a self-sufficient, payment gateway for your clients might just be the answer. Okay? So let's take that same example this time, just to give you that additional flavor. Let me show you what it is to do with Pivotal. So you can see the terminal IDs and the secret keys differ, just their formatting and their overall posture of the type of information that's captured varies from one provider to the other. But keep in mind the constant here is that they've easily differentiated your trust account and your general account as two separate entities. And separating them out is how they've been able to accomplish that compliance that's very important. So to keep this straightforward, let's actually do another invoice, and let's do a docket for maybe 2 hours for the same fence issue for Mr. Peter. I'm just going to add another docket. I'm going to say second meeting, client meeting, detailed meeting. I'll say I spent actually 2 hours on it. I'm actually going to spend or bill my client 2 hours at $150, so $300 plus tax. Keep in mind, the overall invoice can contain both dockets and disbursements. So maybe you had an application fee or a court fee that you paid for using general. Basically, we'll say add new general for my actuals. This could be a court fee, $90. Could be tax exempt. Maybe you paid for this to the Ministry of Attorney General using a check from your general account. Okay? There's a $90 disbursement plus the $339 legal fee as part of this invoice cycle. So now when you generate that invoice, you're basically expecting about $429 worth of money from your client. And that's exactly what we tell you. The client owes you $429. We also tell you that that invoice is pending. So let's go ahead. The invoice complete, which is it picks up all the dockets and disbursements in that particular cycle. Maybe call this Swift Blue. We'll skip the preview one more time, but it's always a great habit to do a pre-bill or a preview prior to generating an actual invoice, because it gives you that additional flexibility to correct any mistakes that you may have done without reversing that invoice, right? So let's go ahead and generate that invoice. Now, if you've got trust money involved, you can always mark this as paid if they've actually paid you a top-up retainer right before the work was done. I'm just going to wait till uLaw prepares that invoice for you to generate and send it to your client. And we often talk about, all right, how do I send this to my client? You can very well compose an email. Say, invoice just drag and drop that invoice into that email. Okay, this is how you can digitally send that email. Okay. Now let me show you how this particular invoice differs from the previous. With this tight integration with the payment gateway, what uLaw does is it also provides at the end of that invoice, digital invoice document. Obviously, this tells you everything you need to know about this matter, because it tells you the invoice number, the second client meeting, very thorough, detailed invoice. Gives you the client's name, has your information, $339. There's a $90 disbursement for the court fee with no taxes. Here is a client payment. So a previous client payment that was done through a credit card, and that was the reference number for your client to know that you've given him a very thorough invoice That's a running bill. Now the last, and you can reduce the number of pages. You can make this eco-friendly, and you can reduce the number of pages as well. It's got the $429, and now there's a new line item that's added to the bottom of that invoice. Okay, so let's assume that you do send that invoice. I'm just going to send it to the client. Okay. Now let's look at it from the perspective of your client. So you've sent it, and you're happy with having rendered that service, and now you move on to the next client. Okay? So let's assume your client, I'm just going to go into my sent items and open that email, but technically your client would receive such an email, and you can actually compose this. Now he or she would open up that invoice. In this case, Peter Plan is going to open up this particular docket, or this PDF, sorry, and now he sees this link right here. So you would obviously sign this. It clearly illustrates that saying, hey, dear client, please click here to pay for the balance of the credit card. And when he does that, because of your integration, in this case with Pivotal, because that was the integration that you had with uLaw, and this particular link is embedded based on the integration that you have with your law firm. It picks up the right choice and now gives your client the capability to pay for this $429 in a self-serve mode. Okay? So let's say your client goes ahead and pays for this, right? And he can actually pay this at his own leisure. And you can see it's for the total amount of $429. Right away, it tells your client this is processed, fantastic. Here's a little snippet of this payment summary. Now you get a copy of this as well, so you would make sure you send this to the client. Very important, as soon as your client has paid for it at their own leisure, you get notified as a law firm or a legal firm about that payment process. Okay. Every time you generate an invoice, you obviously get an email as well. So, but here's the new email which says payment processing. And here's that same email which says terminal ID, that's the order ID for $429 was approved. Okay. Even better, it gives you a unique reference number that you can use for providing a receipt. Right? That's a very important next step. And it clearly tells you the name of the client and says, Mr. Peter Plan, the payment is made for the matter PP 42354. Hence issue. So uLaw makes it very clear for which matter was this particular payment done for. So you can either, and we say please copy this, so you can take this entire unique reference number, log into uLaw, go into that particular file, and tell us that you've already got this payment. The money actually has already been deposited into the bank. This is you just telling us that that money has been received. And more importantly, giving your client that receipt. You can also see uLaw, if there are multiple matters, does its automatic load balancing of the money based on the amount. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a final experience of how you, as a legal professional, utilizing this integrated payment feature with uLaw, can provide that key capability to your client for him or her to be self-serve ready through that invoice that's being provided. Okay? And the payment receipt is something you can email as well, right away thanking Mr. Peter Plan for the payment that he just made. Okay, there you go. So once again, this particular session, I think we've looked through the traditional way of accepting payments without an integrated payment gateway. We spoke about how we could have payments through checks, or maybe you have a terminal that you pay a monthly subscription fee for to accept these credit cards and swipe them physically. Or you may be waiting for that check to clear the bank, or maybe do it electronically sometimes through a wire transfer that also may have fees. Now, the other option to consider to provide that added flexibility is explore. If you're a uLaw customer, we have these 3 providers today. If there are others in the market that you think would benefit the society, the legal profession, do please bring it to our attention. We're happy to talk to them and integrate with them, like we're doing it with LawPay right now. We are able to connect you with the appropriate personnel across these 3 companies. You would decide upon one of them, and once you've decided, they give you your own terminal for both trust and general with its own secret key, which you enter into uLaw one time within the settings. And after that, you pretty much can use the uLaw features right within the workflow, whether it's a trust-related transaction or a general-related payment transaction, to accept credit cards as a means of getting paid for that service in a compliant manner as well. Okay? The previous invoices, as you notice, also carry the same link. But the first one, without the integration, did not carry that link. So we automatically embed the appropriate payment gateway if the integration or the setup has already been done within the uLaw settings. If there are no payment gateway, obviously we don't have that link embedded. Even when we embed it, it's very important as to which payment gateway is being utilized within the law firm. Okay? So with that, we kind of come to the end of the demonstration. Once again, the goal for today's webinar was to again review the key features and flexibility of the integration of the uLaw product with the 3 payment gateways that we integrate today, was TD Canada Trust, Pivotal Payments, and Moneris. And no matter which financial institution you already are working with, these 3 companies are able to integrate with those financial institutions, okay, and provide you with that compliant payment gateway experience. We looked at how you can set it up within uLaw and start to accept both trust and general-related financial transactions right within uLaw as well. As a roadmap, and as my final closure statement, we're very happy that we're integrating the same payment capabilities into our mobile platform that you should start to expect pretty soon. We're almost there to complete the testing, and we're hope to release it in the coming months. And that's going to make it even more powerful for you to accept payments no matter where you are, right from your mobile app. Okay? And last but not the least, the 4th company that or payment gateway that we integrate is with that LawPay. You now have more additional flexibilities to work with 4 different companies. And if you do come across others that are meaningful to your business, please do bring them to our attention. Now I'd like to open the floor for any questions that you may have with another 2 more minutes left in the webinar. And I'll wait for you to send us your questions through the chat window so that both me and my support staff can answer those questions. Okay, so we have a first question about how do we set up in the settings. This was something that we'd covered as one of the first elements. So right under our settings, we have a tab called Accounts, and we have a section called Payment Collection under Check Position. By default, this is set to none. Okay, this is what you would see in a very typical uLaw instance. Now, if you have interest in accepting credit cards as a means of both trust and general payments, you can choose one among the 3 different partners that we work with based on the best rates they provide and the flexibilities that they provide. And let's assume you work with TD. And they would then they would create 2 IDs, one for a trust terminal ID and then one's called general ID. And they would give it a secret key because that's the one that's used to transact in a very secure way. It's almost like your password. Now you would take that information that they provide and you would provide it within uLaw one time. And then once that's saved, that information is then used based on the workflow right within uLaw. So if it's a trust transaction, you know that you're basically going into Trust tab or you're doing a new retainer, we know that as well. So I can either go to the Trust tab and say Deposit and Trust, or you can basically just say Disbursements Retainer, New Retainer. It's the same screen. And you can enter the amount and now click on the Payment Collection. And we know that this is a trust transaction right from that workflow. Okay? Hope that answered that question. Okay, we have one more question. Which email ID are these emails being sent to? That's a very good question. So this particular email that's getting sent to, you can see it comes from accounts and it goes to whichever is the email address that you've set up within your uLaw account. If you go into our settings details, we capture a work email, so sales@uLawPractice.com. That's to who the email is sent. In your case, this would be your legal firm's email address, right? Okay. And if there aren't any more questions, well, I thank everyone who's joined me today in our uLaw webinar. I hope this was a informational session and, again, your time well spent. Wishing you a very happy Friday and look forward to seeing you in our next webinar next Friday. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great day.